Wait, I'm sorry. Did somebody try to ask a question? No, okay. So this is the San Diego Regional Litter Abatement Subcommittee. It's Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020 at 10 a.m. And we have our first item is public comment or communications and member comments. So members of the public shall have the opportunity to address the San Diego Regional Litter Abatement Subcommittee. Are there any comments? Clerk?
Yes, Chair Blakespear, we do have one member of the public, Sally, who has her hand raised.
Good morning. Wanted to talk about a few things. My name is Sally Small. I'm with the Emerald Hills Neighborhood Council, and we recently joined the Adopt a Highway program at 94 and Kelton. And wanted to say that we really need to get Caltrans working on 94, specifically between College Grove and Euclid Avenue is really bad. We've only gone out there once so far, but we'd love to get other communities and maybe EDCO, because I believe some of the issue there is because of EDCO and people dropping stuff as they're trying to get there. Also, regarding a need for community cleanups, we did a lot of it with Monica Montgomery's help recently with the dumpsters for the last week and a half. And we need more community cleanups if at all possible, so there's not public dumping in the streets and on medians and things like that, which is a major issue here in Southeast. Seems to be more of an issue for us than other neighborhoods, but we do know that it happens elsewhere. We're looking for help for additional cleanups and to get more Adopt a Highway program activity, as well as having Caltrans pick up more frequently in our area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other comments?
Thank you. Yes, Chair Blakespear, we have one more member of the public, Admiral Herring.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I'm retired Admiral Len Herring, and I'm the executive director at I Love a Clean San Diego. And I'm just here to basically say we need to figure out how to fix the problem in the current situation. Getting together under the pandemic is very difficult, but it doesn't mean that our environment should be neglected in that same fashion. So I'm asking that, and we had a great meeting with the Sandag group the other day from a couple members who have formed a small committee. But I'm asking that the Sandag organization take a look at how to prevent, not just pick up. So what are the necessary steps that need to be put into place, and who are the partners that need to be brought to the table so that the procedures necessary to both abate and stop how this material is being, how it enters our environment is much more important than just forming people to get together and pick it up. While that is important and that's what we do, it's very difficult in this time frame. So I'm just asking that we engage, we continue, take advantage of some of the cleanups that are available. Our coastal cleanup is coming up, but our highways and byways are very dangerous places to pick up. So we do require and need Caltrans' support and help in trying to figure out what's the next step. What are the next programs that we can put in place? How do we get better at tarping the load? How do we make examples of certain areas that have been very positively affected by public efforts. So I'm here to help and provide support wherever I can. And I'm very encouraged to see that Sandag is coming together on this issue. It's very important to protect our environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comments. So now we will move on to the first item, which is subcommittee role and objective. And this talk, we're going to just talk briefly about roles, responsibilities, and coordination with stakeholders. So I want to start this by saying that I'm going to ask the elected board members to weigh in after me to give any of your thoughts on this committee. I want to just mention that the committee is not being driven by anything that is either statutory or the momentum of the administration of Sandag. And I mention that because on other subcommittees I've been on, they're being driven basically by statutory requirements like RENA or the regional plan. And so staff is doing a lot of the work to put things in front of the board members so that we make decisions and we stay on track. This subcommittee is not being driven by any of that. So it's really up to all of us who are elected to say, what is it we want to come out of this? And I want to make sure we don't waste people's time by just having a lot of talk. I really want us to come out with something that we can, maybe it's a recommendation to the Sandag board, or I'm open to what the other electeds think. I'd really like to solicit what is the work product that's going to come from this? Because I think what we need to do, if our goal, or at least my goal, is that we can change the environment on our freeways, Caltrans right-of-ways. So we have a lot of trash, and we've had a lot of trash for a long time, and it seems like it's getting worse, not better. And I'll say that just from my perspective personally, since I've been elected, have tried to do what I can as just the mayor to address this. So I've had individual private meetings with 3 successive Caltrans district directors, and the last one with Gustavo, which I think he's the most energetic on this topic and interested in helping solve it. That one involved his top deputies that deal with trash, as well as Sandag staff members. But the bottom line of all that, of the various meetings and work, was nothing that I could tell. I mean, there was not a difference in terms of trash on the freeways. So as the last public speaker mentioned, having us get together as electeds throughout this county and say, we want a different outcome. We want to have less trash in these right-of-ways. And what partners do we need in terms of reduction, source reduction? What cleanups do we need to be different or better managed or more frequent? How can we do this? It seems to me like it's accomplishable with will, and potentially with, who knows if it will require us to be asking our state legislators to change the accountability that Caltrans has. Like when there is an assessment of the amount of trash, what's an acceptable amount? I think that's also a possible outcome. I'm currently not involved in a discussion with our legislators about it, but I think that's something that could come up. But having a partnership with Caltrans really focused on this, with us looking countywide and having community partners like I Love Clean San Diego and any of the other organizations, I think we should explicitly reach out to the ones that are dealing with trash and waterways and coast keepers and keeping things clean, so that we can have their experience of on the ground best practices, so that we can try to reach a different reality than we currently see. So I'd like to ask the electeds on this Zoom to mention any and talk about any objectives, responsibilities, the coordination that you'd like to see. Because as I said at the beginning, we are driving this. There's no other staff that's driving it. I'm hopeful that there will be Sandag staff that we can recommend that this be a priority of Sandag, that there will be a staff person who sees this as part of their responsibility and helps us put together the agenda, what's the next step, who basically manage it. I mean, everything that I'm involved in has staff people like that. And at the city level, I don't have someone who can be with me to do that. So I'm hoping Sandag is able to make that happen, but I think we as a group have to request that of Sandag. So if you would like to raise your hand, I can see you at the top, or put your hand up, then I'll call on you to give your thoughts about what you'd like to accomplish here and what you see as our work product at the end. Serge. Wait, we can't hear you.
Sorry, everyone. Hey, good morning, everybody. And then thanks for this leaderful effort. Thanks, Catherine. We appreciate it. And Sandag staff for helping make this happen. Obviously, I think all of us are shocked, dismayed, concerned about the problem, but it sounds like just from listening to Len, listening to Catherine, and I think talking to Gustavo yesterday, and again, just like Catherine, we have been talking to Caltrans. I think Gustavo is the third director. We've talked about this issue and expressed our concern, especially every fall before the rains come, because I think the big picture is, you probably know that most of our cities, if you look at really the work being done by Public Works, probably 90% of it is adhering to stormwater regulations. Like the amount of energy that all of our cities and staff have to spend to make sure that that trash doesn't go into the local waterways costs our cities huge amounts of time and resources. And obviously it's worth it. So there is a regulatory framework that we all have to adhere to. So I think that's a good reminder about, you know, the Clean Water Act and other stormwater regulations in the state of California that fortunately Caltrans seems to be exempt from. I understand the regulatory environment, but for me at least, I think this is I chair the Shoreline Preservation Committee, and to me that's a very stakeholder-driven process, obviously with regional initiatives, but pretty much everyone in the room that has to deal with coastal issues, and then, you know, especially when it comes to specific projects, is it around that table, well, now virtually, when we need to be. And I think it's a very good model, at least for our subcommittee, on very specific regional, very tangible projects and getting everybody in the room from the federal, state, and local level to take on those projects. So I would hope that at least we maybe have thematic meetings. So maybe we have an enforcement compliance meeting, and that gets really the folks in the room, whether it's CHP, the City of San Diego Stormwater Department, the Regional Water Board, whether it's support, and then our waste haulers for specifically, because it seems very clear that we have a waste hauler problem. Like that, from what you talk to law enforcement agencies and then Caltrans, it's very clear that our waste haulers are not monitoring the amount of trash that's flying off of their trucks. And then number two, it's clear that CHP they need some help on the enforcement side of enforcing what's coming off the back of cars. So that's one issue. And then I think possibly another meeting again about education, compliance. So how do we all work together, probably a lot of the same agencies to come up with some sort of campaign. If some of you remember, maybe not old enough to remember back in the 60s with the guy crying, watching the trash. We're back to like when I was a kid, when people just threw their beer bottles off the highway. Like I went to grad school in Texas. It was like that. People would just drink, whether you could drink and drive in Texas back then in the early 90s, and they literally just threw their beer bottles on the highway. So, and they had a really classic campaign, Don't Mess with Texas. We're probably like that in California. And then finally, I don't think there's any other state in the country that is as bad as this. I took a road trip through Arizona, Nevada, and Utah recently. Didn't see any trash on the highways anywhere close to being like California, except for maybe in Las Vegas. So definitely have a problem. And it's clear that in Sacramento, they're not taking this seriously. And then finally, regardless of what happens with that trash, it's all gonna wash into our jurisdictions, and then our cities will be responsible for picking it up. And if we don't, then we'll get fined by the regional water board. So anyway, just a summary, let's get to work. Let's make it thematic. Let's get the stakeholders around the table. And I think all of us together can make this happen. And instead of any discussions about, well, it's here, it's there, it's everywhere. We all know that. It's north, south, east, west, northeast, southeast. It's covering every part of the county. And I think all of us together can make a significant issue. And like I told Gustavo, and then we can make this a model for the rest of California, because it's everywhere, it's all over California. So thanks. And thanks to your leadership on this, Catherine, I appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. And so thank you for your comments. I just want to, when we're reaching out to stakeholders, I would like to ask Sandag staff to reach out to stakeholders, because I reached out to Len yesterday and said, are you coming? And he hadn't heard of the meeting. And so, we need to know if you could tell me the name of any additional stakeholders, and we could ask them to be explicitly invited to this. Can you say any right now that you
Mayor, good morning. Good morning to all of you. Good to see you all. Just to your earlier point, we'll commit to you to have work with Caltrans to make sure that there is a staff assigned and resources available to do this. As to the stakeholder, we would appreciate, we'll obviously do what we needed to do to figure out who, but if you think of something, somebody, some entity, some stakeholder that we don't think of, pass it through. So I commit to you that we will put whatever resources in working with Caltrans to make sure we accomplish what you and Mayor Dedin and others talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then, you know, I would argue that probably each of our, I have Chris Helmer, our natural resource director, probably each of our cities has literally a super genius that all they do is spend their time trying to figure out trash, and they know every stakeholder, every regulatory body. They probably already have a plan that they've dreamed of for the last 5 years on how to figure this out. So I think tapping in that capacity, you know, just a simple email from us to them saying who needs to be at the table or regional level probably result in an algorithm and sort of like supercomputer worth of plans and names that we can use to help solve this problem.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure somehow at these meetings that we have the people who are involved in this, because otherwise we're having this disconnected from the ground, you know, the ground level. So if you want to somehow, I mean, when Hassan, thank you Hassan for saying you're going to appoint somebody to be a staff liaison. When you've decided who that is, then you maybe Serge can let that person know about your stakeholders and you know, in my city, any of the rest of us on this call, so that people like Len are on these calls and watching and helping advise.
Sure.
So we'll do that kind of as things go. Okay, so let me see. Are there any other council member? Yeah, Monica Montgomery, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Okay, you can hear me. Thank you so much for doing this and for leading on this, Chair Blakespear. As you know, one of my constituents has already called in, and so this is a huge issue for us. We just had a new ramp done on the 94 connecting to Euclid, and right away before the project was even done, there's just so much trash there. As Mayor Dedina said, it's everywhere, but that's just a prime example of having something built that is new, that the community is excited about, but it still has, you know, it just brings a whole new issue to the community. So I really don't have too much to add. Everything that I was thinking of pretty much has already been said. I just would like to, of course, bring in the partners. I really want to get a grasp on the source of the trash, because, you know, then we can set out our sort of systematic solutions to it. If we have, we're having issues from haulers, this the mayor just said, and then one of the constituents said, and the haulers are not acknowledging that, then that's, you know, that's an issue. So we really all need to come to the table on that, because if that is a major issue, then we will work together to try to, you know, solve that, or at the very least be able to hold accountable who is responsible. And in that same vein, when speaking to the public, you know, I do remember having more of a kind of a PR focus on not littering, like it was like a super bad thing. And now it just doesn't seem like that's the case, you know, and I'm really not into the punitive stuff, but I do think that it should, we as a regional electeds should maybe explore having that type of messaging to the members of our region again, and making it, you know, a top priority from that perspective, because I agree that it just seems like it's very casual now. But again, knowing the sources will help us to understand how we can solve the issues. We definitely don't want to be discouraging to those who are trying to help, but we do want to hold accountable those who are contributing to the problem and not acknowledging that. And just the last, last thing that I'm thinking about is just acknowledging some of all of the hot spots. If that's every single ramp everywhere, then that, you know, that kind of just what it is. But if there are hot spots and we can measure, you know, what a hot spot would be, maybe Caltrans already has a system like that, and we can map that out. I think that would be important as far as cleanups are concerned. I do agree that we should be proactive. I don't have any major ideas on how to be proactive other than making it a priority through some type of messaging campaign. I know there are a lot of other experts here that have ideas about being proactive so that these issues don't happen. The one thing that we did do in the month of August in District 4 is we provided a lot of dumpsters for members of our community who we're really far away from the landfill. A lot of times people don't have the funding to get to the landfill and dump what they need to dump. And we filled, we've got our reports are coming back. Just in that month, we collected over 50 tons of trash, and a lot of our dumpsters were filled within 40 minutes. So this is, we are focused on Caltrans and the freeways, of course, but it's just an overall problem. So I think whatever we do, we can be a model for all of the other issues that are going on in our region and then in our state. So that's all I would like to contribute. That it's really a lot of the same thing, but I would like to see the hot spots and kind of if we have a system to even deal with that right now. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comments. And I think I did see in the Q&A, but now it's disappearing. I don't know if we've disabled it, but maybe we could, oh, there it is. It's in answered. But if you can type in any community organization you'd like Sandy to read to in the Q&A right there, then they can compile all that and we don't need to say it verbally. So I think that's a good place to put it. Yeah, the messaging is really important and I appreciate those comments. Okay, let's see who else. Council member, I can't see your full name. Let's see.
Council member Rigby.
Or no.
Councilmember Mendoza, both have their hand raised.
Oh, that's Jennifer, yeah.
Hi. Hi. So this is a lot of this is just reiterating what some of you've already said, but I go back to a time where we had a campaign called Give a Hoot, Don't Pollute, and I can't remember the name of there was like a little owl, but this was a program that, and we've talked about it as a council here in Lemon Grove. This was a program that was pushed in the schools. I know a lot of you are parents, and your kids can make you feel really guilty when you don't throw trash in the trash can. And if we need to start with kids, let's start with the kids. But it'd be great to get some kind of a program like that back in the schools. We all see those signs, the Caltrans signs where you can sponsor an on-ramp or an off-ramp. And I think a lot of organizations don't realize what sponsoring a sign like that means. And maybe Caltrans could do a little more education on that. I've talked to people and they actually think that if you sponsor a ramp, that you personally have to go out and pick up trash there. And that's not the case at all. Caltrans does not want you going out there and picking up trash. What you're doing is with your sponsorship money, you're helping Caltrans, and correct me, I think someone from Caltrans is on here, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're paying for Caltrans to pay a little extra attention to that on-ramp and on-ramp. I know here in Lemon Grove, we have freeway. We're bound by a freeway on two sides. The 94 separates us from La Mesa, and the 125 from Spring Valley. And sometimes the litter, it's like, oh, that's La Mesa property, or that's Lemon Grove property, or that's Caltrans property, and then nothing seems to get, whose responsibility is it? There's a particular intersection on the 94, the Massachusetts exit, which is the site of repeated homeless encampments. And I know that Caltrans comes out frequently to you know, move these folks, because they really create, it's dangerous for them to be there, you know, on a freeway, camping out on a freeway on-ramp and off-ramp, but it also is, creates a lot of trash, just a tremendous amount of trash. It's on the La Mesa side of the 94, but still, as you come into Lemon Grove, that's the first, that from La Mesa, that's the first thing you see are these homeless encampments. And I know the same thing's going on in Spring Valley to even a much larger degree. So we need to pay attention to the homeless situation around these on-ramps also. In fact, at the bridge, there's someone who actually sleeps like up in the underpass of the bridge, and that seems extremely dangerous. And then, you know, we all have our community cleanups, and I think we're all aware that the quicker you pick up trash, the less likely that someone, the mentality is, if you see a dump spot, that it's like, oh, that's where everybody dumps their trash, so I'll dump my trash there too. So we need to concentrate on the expediency of getting this stuff picked up as well. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Amanda Rigby, or Deputy Mayor, did you have a comment?
Yes, pardon me. Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. A couple of comments. First, I did have a really great conversation with Gustavo yesterday, and we talked about some of the same things. What is the purpose for this committee, and what is it we're hoping to do? Because the litter is a problem all over the place, and I think I commented before that I've had a couple of meetings, as my colleagues have, with Caltrans over the past couple of years, and there hasn't been a lot of resolution. And I think I really appreciate what Admiral Herring had to say about, it's one thing that we have to go after the fact and pick up all the trash, but what is it that we can do regionally with jurisdictional collaboration? Because as is mentioned, you know, trash doesn't know any boundaries, and it just floats everywhere. And our communities are so connected nowadays. But through regional multi-jurisdictional collaboration, what is it can we do to stop the problem? Not just go around and pick up the trash that's out there, but what can we do to really get the public to understand what kind of a problem this is, both as blight as well as a health and safety issue for people. And I think that's what I'm looking for in this committee. You asked, what is it we're looking to do? And I think if we have a committee, we can talk about the best ways to work together as a region with all the different jurisdictions and all the different agencies involved that would have resources to help deal with this. And I appreciate Serge bringing up the commercial from the 70s. And I had asked Gustavo if he remembered the commercial. And I think it's the one I'm thinking of is with the gentleman in the canoe in the river. And he's looking at all the trash all around him, and he's got tears coming down his face. And I think some of us that, you know, were maybe teenagers in the 70s might remember that commercial, as well as the Give a Hoot, Don't Pollute, and the owl. And I think, and Gustavo and I talked about that and the different ways that we can reach our public as far as education goes. And not just the message, don't pollute, don't litter, but also why. I think it's important that people understand what a health hazard this can be for our communities, and especially highlighted right now as we are facing this global pandemic and a health crisis. And I think it's important that people understand that trash does have, you know, can carry some health issues with it. So that's what I am looking for. I'm looking for ways that we can talk about a publicity campaign to really bring back some of those old programs. They were successful. You know, litter abatement was really a thing in the 70s and in the 80s and the 90s. And here we are now. We don't have a lot of communication about it. We don't have a lot of publicity about it. We don't have ad campaigns about it. And I think perhaps it's time that we do that again. I like the idea of going into the schools and seeing what we can do to promote better litter abatement policies with our kids, because as we've heard already, our kids can be some of our harshest critics and keep us in line. And I think they do that for themselves and their peers in our community as well. So I really like those ideas, but also on the compliance. And I have to agree with Councilmember Montgomery. I'm usually not a punitive person. I'm not somebody who wants over-regulations, and I don't want government involved any more than they already are. But because this has become such a prevalent problem, we really do need to look at compliance. And if we're going to be asking compliance on every level, we need to find a way to put teeth into that. And so I agree that we need to look into that and see what that looks like regionally. So I appreciate SANDAG allowing us to come together on this issue. I know that a lot of us have individually gone to Caltrans, have gone to other agencies and tried to have these conversations on our own with no luck at all. So I'm hoping that coming together as a region, we'll be able to do this. And I appreciate Mayor Blakespear, your leadership on this, and SANDAG as well. So I think that's it for me right now, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Yes, Deputy Mayor Jack Feller.
Good morning. I had a great conversation with Gustavo yesterday, and I think I got clarification on quite a bit of the process he has to go through. As far as the statement earlier, I appreciate the concern and the way of attacking this with information and the trash haulers providing their solutions as well. But I think what you really what we're missing is the freeways that are completed, that there isn't the same trash on Highway 15 from north to south as there is in our area, for instance. So I realize San Diego's the big dog here and Chula Vista, but we're up here and we have 19 miles of freeway. And if you take it both ways, that's 38 miles of freeway in our city. The 76, 78, and 5 as they cross through our jurisdiction, and almost all of the freeways that I'm talking about are within the city of Oceanside. Not that they border on Vista in a couple of places, in Carlsbad in a place. But it has to be about 10 years ago, we cleared out some underbrush on an off-ramp where we were having complaints about the issues of homelessness and trash. We cleared it out, so it raised it up, so there was no visibility, no way to be invisible if you're sleeping under the bushes as homeless. So homeless is one of our big issues that is probably affecting every city. We have miles of freeway, as I said, and 70, the interchanges are where we have our most major problems. We have branches down in the right of way of Caltrans, and we need immediate help to clean. The process has to go hand in hand with cleaning it and getting the other stakeholders on board. So I have often thought that the Adopt a Highway program is probably okay, but it is sometimes just, people run out of money or whatever the cause, and they don't last as long as we think they could. And I'm mulling about how the cities can be involved with Caltrans to take care of some of these issues if Caltrans can't get here. And I don't know that solution either. So I would like it to be some sort of discussion to find out how the cities can actually help in these areas. We have, like I said, we've got 25,000 Marines coming off the base, going on and coming off the base every day. And so I'm thinking that that is part of a solution for, especially for interchange type situations. As far as rural versus downtown San Diego, most of our rural, our area is not as dense as San Diego, Lemon Grove, Chula Vista, National City. And so there's a little difference how we, definitely how we deal.
One moment.
I apologize. These phones talk whenever they decide to. So I've been all over this state, and Serge talked about no trash in Arizona and Nevada and all over California. Even Highway 5 going up through the middle is spectacular as far as cleanliness. And I think there's got to be a solution here somewhere that we can have clean freeways and start the process of getting these people that are responsible for the trash under control. You know, some good ideas have been tossed out, and I think there's many solutions in this discussion. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Jack. I appreciate that. We're going to go to Gustavo after this, but by the end of this meeting, I'd like us to have narrowed in on what the next topic is. And I think part of the messaging, when we're talking about messaging to people not to litter, and thinking about a campaign like that, which would come from government, but also potentially come from a paid source, I think we also need to get media attention on the fact that we're doing these, because that's articles, that's part of the outreach saying we are addressing trash and make sure you care about trash. And so I'd like to ask the Sandag communications team to be saying, at the next meeting, we're going to be talking to our waste haulers so that there can be also some focus on that and what we're doing here, because that just helps get the message out more. So at this point, let's go to Gustavo and have him offer his perspective and thoughts, and narrowing in also on what we're going to do at the next meeting. And I would propose that we do these meetings maybe every 2 weeks, like every other week we meet, and we decide on the next topic, so we could be moving toward that trying to create change. So go ahead, Gustavo.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
This is the clerk, Tessa. For the point of order, are you moving on to item number 3?
Yes.
Or are you asking?
Yes.
So we need to see if there's any public comments on item number 2.
Okay. Are there public comments?
And yes, I do see one hand raised for public comment on item number 2, Mr. Randy Wortman.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Randy Wortman. I'm the regional coordinator for the Veterans Back to Work program here in San Diego. And I hear a lot of discussion about kind of some of these root causes. And I just wanted to point out real quick, but we can talk more about the program, the work that we do with Caltrans, but especially homelessness, because our program, what we do is we actually hire folks who are currently experiencing homelessness and who are veterans. Although homelessness isn't a requirement, about 80% of our folks are going through homelessness right now. And we work with Caltrans as a contractor essentially to pick up litter along the roadside every single day. They go out every morning at 6:45 a.m. leaving from ECC on Ocean View Boulevard all the way to 3:15 p.m. every single day to take care of this. And it kind of solves two problems. One is obviously the litter, and the other is providing income, providing a place, and helping folks get on the road to housing, to full-time permanent housing, and also a career. I mean, this is just a starting point for a lot of people. So when we talk about some of these root problems, especially with homelessness, that does create a huge amount of trash on the freeway. A programs like ours are really solving and helping to solve kind of two major things at once. So we hope to continue to be part of this, to listen in and to maybe advise, you know, if it's appropriate. So that's all I had to say. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of our program, and that I hope to hear more about what we can do.
Okay, great. Thank you for your comment. Let's move on to item 3, which will be Gustavo.
Thank you, Mayor Blake. Can you all hear me all right? Okay, I'm gonna continue. I'm assuming you can hear me. So thank you for putting this together and also for all the committee members for participating in this. I am very passionate about trash. We are all here at Caltrans, and we're basically the front line together with partners like Randy and the Veteran Outreach Program, picking up the trash. So I share a lot of the feelings and thoughts that you all mentioned. I will start maybe by addressing Sally's comment and also thanking her for participating in community efforts to pick up trash, because we need all hands on deck here. And I hear your comment about the need to clean 94, and we'll add it to our list, extensive list of places where we need to clean up. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that we try to, with our activities to pick up trash, we try to hit all the areas equitably. And I know that sometimes there's frustration and people feel that, hey, you're not taking care of my route, or you're not taking care of my city, but we're out there to serve you all equally. So we'll get on 94 as soon as we can, Sally. We had a great meeting with Admiral Herring and I Love Clean San Diego, and as well as with the Surfrider Association. So that's another group that has some great ideas. They share some things that were done in Marin County that I think we might want to look at. And I think to the extent that we can invite other groups like that, that may bring ideas that were tried in other parts of the states or in other states. And I don't think we should leave any stone unturned when it comes to this. Because like I said, we need all hands on deck. We can't do this alone. I think that I agree with all of you that at the end of the day, the success of this committee is going to be if there's less trash on the highways. If we're just talking about it and there's no action at the end, we will not have succeeded. So I am looking forward to how we can look into a multi-pronged approach that you all identified in your individual comments, but what can we do better with waste management? Where does the trash come from, and how can we reduce the source of trash, and how can we better pool our resources collectively to attack it? One of you mentioned, I believe it was Deputy Mayor Feller, how can cities help? And I think we probably need to have a discussion of the interface between the state right away and the city right away, and who picks up the trash in those streets that go over and under the freeway. And I think that way we make sure that we know who's taking care of what, and we don't think that the city's taking care of it. The city thinks we're taking care of it, and then there's some trash that is slipping through the cracks because the responsibilities are not clear. But I also agree with all of you that talked about education and enforcement. My kids, when they were little going to school, I remember them bringing materials from the I Love a Clean San Diego campaign, and they were educating us, parents, about the importance of keeping litter where it belongs. And I think we need to continue those efforts. We need to increase those efforts to continue targeting schools, but also targeting adults. And perhaps in some cases, we may need to, like I mentioned, look at some efforts in other parts of the state where maybe we somehow can provide resources to people to make sure that they comply the laws, that there are programs that have been tried elsewhere to provide people tarps to make sure that when they are carrying loads in the back of their pickup trucks or their trucks, that they have the resources to comply with the law and cover the loads. And if they then don't decide to do that, that's where the enforcement comes in. And the enforcement is not just on the state highway, but it's also where the trips originate and where the trips end on the cities or the county as well. So again, I think we need to concentrate on all of these things: education, enforcement, and also an action plan to better use our resources. There was a comment made regarding whether stormwater regulations apply to Caltrans, and I can guarantee you that they do. The State Water Resources Control Board regulates litter and trash on state highways. So, so we do have a statewide trash control plan that we submitted to the Regional Water Quality Board, the State Water Board in 2019. And it basically talks about the fact that we need to do enhanced maintenance measures in areas where there's significant trash generating areas. So we are subject to stormwater regulations the same way that, or in similar ways that the cities are. We're not exempt from them. I also wanted to mention the Adopt a Highway campaign. I think is a couple of you mentioned that program. I think it's a great program because it doesn't cost the taxpayers money. And we probably need to come back and share a little bit more about it. But I'll just clarify a couple of things. One is that through that program, nobody pays Caltrans. Through that program, organizations or private sector can adopt a section of a highway or a ramp, and the organizations or the private companies, they can actually come up to the ramps or to the stretch of highway that they adopted and pick up the trash themselves. So they can do that. Or they can opt to hire a contractor to do it for them. If they do, then they pay that contractor directly. The money doesn't come to Caltrans. And those organizations or that private sector doesn't pay Caltrans to do enhanced activities. We don't, that's not how the program works. But there is a great program, again, because those organizations or those private companies that elect to participate, they get recognition in the form of a sign. And that recognition, lets people know that those organizations or that private sector company is taking care of that portion of the highway. And it comes with a certain sense of pride. They have to clean that area once a month, but you wouldn't want your name associated with an area that is dirty. So some of the companies do a little more often than that. But I think it was also Deputy Mayor Feller that mentioned that sometimes organizations or companies lose interest, and it's upon us, incumbent upon Caltrans, to make sure that we keep the participants accountable, and we do that often, and we call them when after they pick up the trash, they leave the bags in the areas where they adopt, and our maintenance forces pick them up and take them to the landfill. So we have a way of measuring if they're picking up trash or not, and when they don't, we call them on it, and sometimes they have good reasons. For example, in March and June, during the stay-home orders of this pandemic, those organizations, nobody was coming out to pick up trash because they were complying with the stay-home orders. So sometimes there are valid reasons, but if there aren't, then ultimately either they decide to drop out from the program, it's a volunteer program, or sometimes we ask them to politely. Again, it's a balance because we're getting a free service. We don't want to be pushy, but also we don't want them to get recognition for something that they may not be doing. So I do believe that good is going to come out of this committee. I mentioned, and as far as partnerships, I mentioned we gotta try to make sure we engage organizations like I Love Clean San Diego, and as well as the Surf Rider Association and any others that want to participate with us. I do think that when it comes to the source of trash, it comes from many sources. There's not a single source, but all of the ones that you mentioned apply here. So as we attack the problem, understanding where the trash where it comes from is important, because that way we can come up with better ways to attack it. There's people driving with windows open and things are flying out of their vehicles. Is that the most significant? No. But when you have 200,000-300,000 vehicles a day in a stretch of highway, even a small receipt starts adding up when it flies out of a lot of cars. we have illegal dumping in some areas, and we have littering. So sometimes people don't want to pay the fees at the dump, or they can't afford to pay the fees at the dump, and they just come in and throw their trash on the state right away. Some programs like the one that was mentioned, I believe it was Councilmember Montgomery or Sally mentioned that there some cities or some districts, they provide dumpsters where people can take their trash. That may be something that needs to be considered in areas where maybe people cannot afford to pay for dump fees and things like that. In other parts of the state or in other states, landfills have different dump fees depending on how you bring your trash. If it's covered, maybe you pay a lower amount. If it's not covered, maybe you pay a higher amount, or maybe actually the enforcement agencies are there giving you a fine as well. There's a lot of, we talked about waste management companies. I would like to say that in general, they're good and they understand and they help us and they work with us attacking these problems. But there's also a lot of smaller people, there's basically private people hauling things when they're moving or when they're doing remodeling or things like that. Those are a little bit harder, and a lot of stuff, even big stuff, flies out of the back of pickup trucks or even bigger trucks from smaller organizations. And I think we need to somehow reach out to them as well. So some things come out of traffic collisions, and that's something that we need to work better with the responders that clean up, the tow companies that respond to those collisions, and make sure that we do a better job after the collisions to pick up the trash after that. You know, how we pick up trash from residential properties is stuff flying out during that process of putting those garbage, transferring the garbage from the black and blue bins into the big trucks. During that process is stuff flying out, and if it's not picked up within minutes, the wind from the next car driving by or just the wind itself will throw it on the city streets, will throw it on storm drains. It will eventually end up on a state highway somehow. So do we need to revisit the fact that sometimes we put loose items inside those big trash bins? And encampments. I think a couple of you mentioned encampments as well. That is a big problem. Under the COVID pandemic, we are not removing encampments unless they pose a safety hazard. And so how do we allow those encampments to stay, but to be clean is a challenge, and it's something that we're gonna have to talk about. A lot of the items that we find during these times are related to COVID, and some of them are masks, face coverings, some of them are gloves. So educating the public about the fact that it's good to protect yourself, but it's not good when you throw those and discard those and use products on a street, or city street, or on a state highway. And we also find a lot of fast food items, either cups or lids from drinks and paper products. So I think to some degree engaging the fast food industry and seeing what they can do. I think again, when we met the other day with Surfrider Association and I Love Clean San Diego, they talked about some partnerships that they had in the past with some specific fast food companies. And I think that's something worth investigating, revisiting, and see if we can expand it maybe to all of them. So in general, that's what I wanted to say. Again, thank you all for participating in this. Also, thank you to the public for coming in and making comments. And to our partners, Randy, I think the Better Outreach program is, like you said, it's great because it addresses two issues with one, and we need to continue leveraging those programs. But also, everybody that is out there working, picking up trash is really risking their lives. It's not easy picking up trash next to high-speed traffic.
Gustavo, could I ask you a question? Thank you for your
absolutely
your comments. So you mentioned a lot of different things. You know, you mentioned private people hauling, commercial waste hauling, traffic collisions, adopt a highway programs, encampments, how you pick up residential litter, engaging fast food. I mean, a lot of different things. So if we're trying to drive to a different result here, it seems like it might be useful for this committee to know, what are we currently doing? Like, what is the level of service that we're currently needing? And how are you assessed? How frequently are you assessed? And what is your current process for picking up trash? How many have Adopt a Highway program? Like, basically for you to provide us a bit of a peek behind the curtain publicly about what is it that is creating this current reality. And I don't know if we're clearly not going to be able to do that right now, but if we did that at the next meeting, and I don't know if you could narrow in on one of those many topics that seems to be the most important. It seemed to me, from what the comments were from other electeds and from having spoken to you before, that the commercial waste haulers, I mean, there's really two, right? Waste Management and EDCO, having them, because things blow out of their trucks on the way to the dump. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you don't see that as a big problem, but if we wanted to have them come before this committee and answer questions and explain their process, do you see that as being useful to trying to change the amount of litter?
Yeah, like I said, I think we need a multi-pronged approach, and I think that's one of the aspects that we need to tackle. I'm happy to bring back on the next meeting any aspect of this. I'm happy to bring back the Adopt a Highway program and talk about how it works, talk about the areas that are adoptable, see how we can get more of those areas adopted. I'm happy to bring, to reach out to all of the big waste haulers and have them come back and explain how they work. I think that it's all a good discussion, and how, like you say, how do we prioritize it, and what is your interest in seeing first? I'm happy to help with whichever the committee wants to bring back for the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, to me, it seems like an understanding of where we are currently so that we can have a goal of moving toward better is a good place to start, because otherwise we're just in this morass of different factors, and it seems like it can be hard to make any movement. So I would like to have all of us understand that. And so, like, kind of as a baseline. And then I think we should choose one of these areas to talk about in more depth and see if we can affect how or what it would take to affect a change there. And if anybody else wants to weigh in on that. Okay, Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. I think what you just asked him to do is almost a whole meeting in itself to start the process. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is to understand what they do and how they do it.
Okay, I think that's a good point. Yeah, and so we could have a full meeting, our next meeting, where you're talking about the assessment and how you run Adopt a Highway program, how frequently you clean up, how you prioritize. What is, to me, there are areas that seem better managed. Like, for example, if there's a little street sweeper that has to drive down the freeway, that's better than all of the banks on the side and the off ramps that accumulate a lot of trash that require somebody to pick them up. So the resource allocation in those areas, maybe how much money you spend on this, how much discretion you have in your budget in terms of what you could be spending, or who's making those decisions? Is that you at the district director level? Some of that I think would be useful for us to know. And I think Serge had his hand up.
No, I think I made some comments in the chat, but I think this is going in the right direction. I appreciate everyone's comments. Gustavo, I think, nailed it. I think I'd love to see us, spend 90% of our time on the 10% of the folks that are causing 90% of the problems. And obviously, I think a good leverage point and impact point is, the companies, Waste Management, waste haulers, companies, and potentially others. And now I understand the collision issue, because when I see tires and car parts, there's a bend from San Diego to National City near the Navy Yard, man. It's just like, it was like a whole car's there on the freeway. To me, that's a good start. I think that, because that gives CHP, and whether San Diego Sheriffs and San Diego PD and other law enforcement agencies, and I agree with Councilmember Montgomery, we don't want to start giving tickets to folks yet, but But I think those companies and agencies have a jurisdictional and legal requirement to actually manage their operations in a good way. And it's clear, you know, we've got to figure out how we hold them accountable, and we can all do better. Because I think what you'll find, and what it sounds like, is that's a large percentage of trash is coming from that. There's a whole other issue of people, obviously, who are just dumping all their trash on the side of the freeway, something I've never seen before. So that, you know, we've all seen it, right? It looks like someone's just taken their entire garbage can and just dumped it on the highway, so that's also a problem. I think that's the illegal, to me, that's the enforcement part. And then I think all of us who manage beaches know that, you know, the fact is our constituents are pigs. The campaigns that we grew up with, where you don't litter, don't give a hoot, don't pollute, no longer apply, and people are really comfortable just dumping their garbage on the beach. I have two boys with lifeguards, and they just tell me these stories, and we can all see it, right? In fact, this morning in a park, just people who just dump their garbage because they no longer care. But we're seeing that with increased enforcement for speeding, increased enforcement for noise, because people have finally had it with just the craziness that our highways have become. You know, we've all seen it. So anyway, so we're all suffering the result. And so I think getting that would be great. And then I think, right, figuring out how we can have a real strategic, great campaign, litter campaign, old school, bring back the kind of old school approach, very wide coverage, you know, the Pride in San Diego, whatever we need to do, would be really great. And I think everybody, it seems like everybody wants to make that happen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's have the messaging and campaign as a separate topic that we'll talk about, especially because that's going to involve, like, who's doing that? You know, are we paying for that? Is that Caltrans doing that? Who's doing that? So we'll have to have that conversation specifically. But for next meeting, and if this works for all of you on this call and for Caltrans, if Gustavo, when you come forward with this information about what Caltrans measures and what number we're at in terms of level of service and all those different questions that I mentioned before, if you could also give some thought to areas where you think we have been doing it this way, we could help if we did it this way. Like if cities, if the Adopt a Highway program, if you say 50% are adopted and the ones that are adopted are trashier than those that aren't, you know, is there a way for us to have more enforcement? Is that a local city issue? Is that Caltrans issue? Like, if you could give a little bit of thought to some of those areas, knowing you're talking to city leaders throughout the county with this task force, so that we could understand where there might be place for movement. Because I know you're already doing it the way you're doing it, but are there places to do it a little bit differently where we could help you, or you just see, I think that this is an area that needs attention. And I mean, maybe you don't even know, but if which ones are trashier or not, but maybe that's data that we say, okay, we need to collect that data. So and if that works for everybody, then, I mean, 2 weeks from now is this 16th, September 16th at 10 o'clock. And we'll just kind of make this our meeting time and go through these things and see and then I still think we need to be aiming for a work product at the end. So we need to have, and I'm hoping Sandag staff can be putting together some action, basically like an action plan. And these things, and recommend these agencies do these things. We recommend a public service campaign. We recommend an increased amount of money here. We recommend city specific actions that come out of this. So, see anyone else with their hand up on that. So I think if that all works for you, Gustavo, and others on the call, then we'll move to the last item,
yes,
number
Mayor.
4.
Yes, that works for us. We'll bring back for the next meeting a presentation that addresses all the points that you made. I did want to mention before we complete the meeting or adjourn the meeting, just a reminder to everyone that it's Coastal Cleanup Month. And so we're going to be trying to do some events here at Caltrans, but we're also going to be trying, like I mentioned earlier, to partner with organizations like I Love Clean San Diego on Coastal Cleanup Day, September 26th. So since our next meeting is going to be close to that date and the month has already started, I wanted to kind of challenge all of us in our organizations and jurisdictions to try to participate this month.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mayor, before we move on, this is Peter Stevens.
Oh. Yes.
I apologize, it's Tessa, the clerk. I just wanted, you cut out a little bit. I wasn't sure if you did ask for public comment on this item, but we do have a hand raised for public comment before we move on to item number 4.
Okay, I think we already took comments on item 3 and we're taking comments now on item 4, no?
The item 3 is the Caltrans update that by Gustavo Gallardo. I believe we just finished.
Okay, let's go ahead and take the public comment.
Okay, it's Admiral Herring.
Okay. Sorry, and I didn't mean to, but I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm a strategic guy, so I'm a root cause thinker and a partner player. So in listening to Gustavo, and we talked yesterday for a little bit about what's there, I think that the organization that you're trying to build is missing some very vital partners. And in order for us to be able to get from point A to point B, I built a list yesterday, and these are some of the ones that I think need to be at the table, if you will. I think you need a representative from the Sheriff's Department. You need a representative from CHP for certain if you're going to start looking at automobile cleanup, especially post-accident, so that half of the damaged vehicle is not left laying on the street for Caltrans to pick up. I think that it's important for those areas to have their respective PDs represented because they are the enforcement, and more importantly, I think they're going to be the arm of education that will be vital to getting to a point in which a citation then is issued. So if you don't have them on board, I can't tell you how many citations CHP has written for violation of the California TARP law, but I can tell you that it isn't anywhere near what's needed if we're to stop, again, root cause issues. I think you need the waste haulers. So, I mean, you mentioned waste management and EDCO, but there's Republic Services. Each of those are franchised throughout the county and are respectively responsible by contract to each of you. So somehow there has to be an arm through contract and public works to be able to hold them accountable for some of the things that you've mentioned. I think it's important that Customs and Border Patrol join the conversation at some point because again, for we in South County who see more than 1,800 trucks traveling back and forth across the border every day without a properly tarped load, most of the things that we're seeing down here are the large pieces of plastic and all the wrappings that everybody literally think they're protecting the cargo, but they're not protecting our environment because at 60 miles an hour, half that stuff doesn't survive the trip. It's heavy on our roadside. So we need to stop them from coming across the border both ways. So it's not just coming across the border, it's individuals, commercial trucks who are loading on this side and headed south, as well as those who are south and headed north. So again, we're coming from a port and a major cargo area. And I think it's important to have the attorney's office represented because in some cases you are dealing with homeless. So there's significant law issues. And again, we have been advised by the attorney's office not to impose because of property rights of individuals, including the homeless. So there are some other issues that need to be taken care of. And then the illegal dumping problem, which obviously is a major deal. And I just think that, you know, Gustavo, after yesterday's conversation, I really believe that we need a much better promoting education effort on the Adopt a Highway program, how it works, what's responsible, and you know, for the mayors and the elected representatives, when you hear how the program is run, you will see that if local businesses are not involved, you are not going to get anything done. And if they're not responsible to the level that is sufficient in cleanup, you're going to have a tough time doing what you're doing. So you can, for Adopt a Highway, you can buy an ad in the Better Business Journal for as much as it costs you to adopt run a highway. And that's just simply not enough to stay ahead of the power curve. So I think when you'll hear it, you'll see that the program has some flaws in how it's put together. So thank you for allowing me to comment.
Okay, well, thank you for those comments. That was all really useful. So in light of those comments, does Sandag staff feel that you could invite a representative from the sheriff, the CHP, Republic Services, EDCO, Waste Management, Customs and Border Patrol, and an attorney? I mean, then we have all the individual city polices. We're represented by the sheriff. I know, you know, like Oceanside isn't. I don't know how we want to manage that part, or if you want to just start with the ones that were more regional. But maybe Jim or Hassan, Jim Linthicum or Hassan or Robin could weigh in on whether you think you could take that on of inviting them.
Yes, absolutely. We'll work with Gustavo and his staff and our point person, and we'll set it up so that just like you and Gustavo discussed, Mayor, that where we have a theme for every meeting and we get the partners there to address it. You end up, we keep track. I've been writing down, keep track of all the actions that have come out of this meeting here, and I know others have. And at the end result, at the end of this whole series of meetings, we'll have an action plan, an implementation plan.
Great, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
And just to add, Mayor, if I may, to add what Jim said, we're as you know, when we adopted the budget, we told the board that we will come for potentially budget changes every quarter. So if we need to adjust our budget to do what Jim just outlined, we'll do so as we move forward in this committee and we're clear in the assignment and what we need to do. We'll make sure that there is resources for Jim and his team and for working with Caltrans to do what we need to do.
Great, thank you so much. I think I saw a hand up from Serge. Yeah.
No, Len brought up a great point about the DA, and I think in my professional life, I do ocean management. We had a huge problem with poaching that, lifeguards and then our California Fish and Wildlife agents were citing people for serious poaching violations, but the city attorney and district attorney and then the court system didn't take it seriously, so they were sort of like letting those go. And so part of our success in sort of helping to crack down on poachers and prosecute serious cases has been that education and involvement piece, not just with the enforcement arm, but the actual, judicial arm. So I think that's a great idea, Len. Thanks for bringing that up. Because I think if the CHP may do a good job in doing a fine, but if the DA is too busy or they don't think it's important, they'll waive it. So I think that piece is going to be critical from the city attorney and the district attorney.
Okay, so the DA, so we're talking about Summer Stephan and Mara Elliott's office. Is that right? When we're saying attorney, or are we talking about the DA?
Well, it'd be within the city of San Diego. I think it's both. It's something maybe we can investigate, but I know that it depends on what level it is. But right. Because the city of San Diego is so large, they may incorporate some of those fines, especially if they're within the jurisdiction of it. I'm not sure how that works. If the fines automatically go to the DA because it's on state property. I know that what I was dealing with, it was both. But anyway, it's definitely worth looking into, and that's a really important component. So thanks again, Len, for bringing that up.
Okay. Yes, Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. I just wanted to caution everybody about all this enforcement. We probably have a problem enforcing a lot of things the way we're releasing prisoners. So I caution you on this one.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, I think what we're trying to do is assemble enough people sitting at the table that we can meaningfully move. And so if they're not here and we make these decisions and then they don't even know it's on their radar, I mean, Len made a great point about needing these people to be part of that conversation. So at some point we might have them respond to us like as part of this hearing process, but at this next meeting at least, I think they would just be present so they could be witnessing this and aware of what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go and what their part might be. So okay, well that all sounds good. Does anybody else want to make a comment? Councilmember Montgomery, did you jump onto the screen?
Yes, I raised my hand. I did it the right way this time. So yeah, I will look into the city attorney issue. My understanding is we take charged misdemeanors within the jurisdiction. So I don't know how that correlates with what Serge was talking about, but I'm certainly happy to look into that for the committee if needed. Also, there was one more thing that was brought up with regard to enforcement. The way that I look at enforcement is we are making every effort to provide what folks need in order to comply. I don't think that there is too much of a correlation with letting people out for nonviolent offenses, other than the fact that people are not able to get housing or jobs when they come out with a record. So that's a bigger overall problem that I'm probably sure this subcommittee won't be talking about too much. But if we are talking about homelessness, then we have to add that, especially if we're going to correlate that with letting people out and you know, all of that. So enforcement to me is, you know, the last ditch effort, especially in a pandemic. As you can see, the city of San Diego, we're not even enforcing right now on parking. So, you know, we're very aware of those things. It's just that I know that we also have to get a hold of this. So I think we're all on the same page with just being very cautious about how we move forward with that. Also messaging in a pandemic as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, and I just also want to say I'm really grateful for the engagement from all the electeds and then the organizations that are participating. You know, it's so nice that we have it's across the county, but it's not everybody on Sandag. It's really a great group of people who are on the subcommittee, and I hope you continue to participate. I mean, I think we can really make a change here, and all of the participation of the different cities throughout the county is really what will make that possible, because it really is truly regional. So I think we'll move on to the next item, which is just basically any other comments. This is upcoming meetings, which we've covered a bit. Did we have any public comment on number 4, Tessa?
I don't see any hands raised from the public at this time.
Okay. Okay, so any other last comment, put your hand up, and otherwise we are going to adjourn. So, okay, with that, we're adjourned.
I do, Chair, I do see a hand raised by Council Member Monica Montgomery.
Okay.
Really quickly, the bi-weekly is going to be really hard for me. And just a heads up, we have committees on Wednesday, so I'll try my best and we'll try to work something out. But I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay, and if you want to send a staff person, or if you think there's someone else in the city of San Diego that you'd like to fill in for you, that, I mean, then it would cross your different jurisdiction, your different districts. I don't know what you think about that, but
environmental services or something like that. We'll talk about it and figure it out, because we want to hopefully be a part and have representation.
Yeah, that would be good to have a staffer from the city and environmental services. I like that idea. Yeah. Okay, well, good. Thanks for letting us know. Okay, well, I think not seeing any other hands, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.